German U-boat captains were shocked by America's hunter-killer groups. The waste from single quality control rejection exceeded Germany's monthly ball-bearing allocation for aircraft production. Willow Run rejected 0.3% of major assemblies for microscopic defects that would have passed German inspection standards. Those rejected assemblies, 237 major components weekly, contained more precision bearings than Germany's entire fighter production consumed monthly. The discarded parts went to training facilities where mechanics practiced repairs, a luxury German facilities could not afford. The waste stream from American quality control exceeded Germany's acceptable production output. Workers threw away defective vacuum tubes that Germany rationed by the individual unit. Radio equipment installation at Willow Run rejected 842 vacuum tubes weekly for failing specifications. German radio production allocated 4 vacuum tubes per fighter aircraft, 6 per bomber, with no spares. American workers discarded more vacuum tubes in 4 days than Germany installed in all aircraft produced monthly. The rejected tubes went to storage facilities where they sat unused working tubes rejected for failing American specifications, but exceeding German manufacturing capability. The cafeteria discarded more coffee grounds daily than German garrison forces in France received monthly. Willow Run's employee cafeteria served 42,000 workers across 3 shifts. Coffee consumption averaged 2.3 cups per worker per shift, requiring 684 pounds of coffee daily. The used grounds, swept into waste bins, totaled 684 pounds of coffee that German troops in occupied France received as weekly rations for entire regiments. The discarded grounds from one factory's cafeteria exceeded the coffee allocation for 340,000 German soldiers stationed in Western Europe. The aluminum trimmed from B-24 production, offcuts considered scrap, totaled 28,000 pounds daily. This single waste stream could have built 17 Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighters daily using German construction techniques. In 1 month, Willow Run's production scrap contained enough aluminum to build Germany's entire fighter production for that month. The waste was not discarded but recycled, creating a closed-loop manufacturing system that recovered 97% of scrap aluminum, an efficiency rate that German industry, starving for raw materials, could only imagine. Oberleutnant Friedrich Lehmann sat in the intelligence office at Lorient reviewing American production reports with mounting concern. A single American facility, he wrote in his analysis, produces more heavy bombers monthly than our entire industry. The Willow Run plant in Michigan completed 432 B-24 Liberators in March. German production of all 4-engine bombers in March totaled 74 aircraft across 6 factories. He underlined the comparison twice. This represents a production ratio of 5:8:1 from a single enemy facility versus our entire industrial base. His report went to BDU headquarters, where Admiral Dernitz's staff filed it with other intelligence assessments that contradicted operational success. The boats were still sinking ships. The mathematics of current combat operations overrode theoretical production concerns. May 22, 1943, North Atlantic, 41 degrees 32 N, 38 degrees 47 W, 1347 hours. Korvettenkapitän Werner Hartmann was conducting a routine periscope sweep when the aircraft appeared. U-569 ran submerged at periscope depth, hunting stragglers from convoy HX-237. The sky had been empty seconds earlier. Hartmann's periscope made its standard sweep. Horizon, clouds, surface vessels, back to horizon. The pattern took 18 seconds. On the second sweep, an aircraft appeared at bearing 270, range estimated 4,000 meters, closing fast. At 1,347, 23 Hartmann shouted the alarm. Aircraft, bearing 270, dive, dive, dive. At 1,347.31, the aircraft, a TBF Avenger from USS Bogue's Escort squadron, released 4 depth charges in a stick pattern that straddled U-569's diving silhouette. At 1,347.38, the charges detonated at 75 feet, precisely the depth U-569 had reached in its emergency dive. The pressure hulls ruptured in 4 locations. At 1,347.51, U-569 lost trim and began an uncontrolled descent. At 1,348.03, the boat exceeded crushed depth and imploded. Elapsed time from engagement to destruction, 40 seconds. Kill time, 40 seconds. At 1352:17, a second Avenger destroyed U-231. The boat had surfaced after receiving Hartmann's radio warning. The aircraft approached from astern, using cloud cover, and released 6 depth charges that bracketed the U-boat before it could submerge. At 1352:29, U-231's bow pitched upward 45 degrees as flooding overwhelmed the aft compartments. At 1352:44, the boat slid beneath the surface stern first. Kill time from weapon release to sinking, 27 seconds. At 1407:33, USS Bogue's third Avenger found U-468. Captain Lieutenant Klaus Schmidt had been tracking a merchant vessel preparing to attack when the aircraft appeared. Schmidt ordered a crash dive at 1407:36. The Avenger dropped a single Mark 24 mine, a homing torpedo disguised as a depth charge. At 1407:51, the acoustic torpedo acquired U-468's cavitation noise. At 1408:07, the torpedo struck the U-boat's propeller shaft. At 1408:19, U-468 lost all propulsion and began taking water through the damaged stern gland. At 1408:44, Schmidt surfaced to abandon ship. At 1409:12, a fourth Avenger strafed the surface boat with .50 caliber machine guns, killing 14 crew members on the conning tower. At 1409:37, Schmidt opened the vents and scuttled U-468. Total engagement duration from first contact to destruction, 4 minutes, 4 seconds. Total engagement duration for USS Bogue's hunter-killer group on May 22, 1943, 2 hours, 7 minutes. Enemy losses, 3 U-boats, 141 submariners killed, 17 captured. American losses, 0 aircraft, 0 personnel, 6 depth charges expended, 1 Mark 24 homing torpedo expended, approximately 2,400 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition. Kill ratio, 3:0. The ammunition expended in this 2-hour engagement exceeded U-569's monthly allocation for its deck gun. The depth charges dropped 6 weapons, totaling 3,600 pounds of Torpex explosive, exceeded the entire Wolfpacks torpedo allocation for a standard patrol. Captain Lieutenant Hans-Joachim Mueller received the loss reports at 16:34 hours. 3 boats from his Wolfpack, destroyed in 2 hours by aircraft from a single escort carrier. He read the engagement reports twice, searching for tactical errors. Hartmann had followed correct procedure: periscope sweep, aircraft sighting, emergency dive. The mathematics should have worked. A U-boat at periscope depth needed 35 seconds to reach safety depth of 150 feet. The aircraft had covered 4,000 meters and attacked in under 40 seconds. Mueller calculated approach speeds, 360 kilometers per hour. The American aircraft had approached at speeds that gave U-boats no time to dive. He called for laymen. "Analyze these engagement reports," Mueller ordered. 3 boats, 1 carrier group, 2 hours. Layman spread the reports across the desk and began calculating. "The Americans had 4 aircraft on station continuously," he said after several minutes. 1 conducting search pattern, 3 on standby. When the search aircraft found a boat, the attack aircraft were overhead within 90 seconds. They're operating in coordinated groups, not individual patrols. Mueller studied the tactical plot. The 3 U-boats had been operating in a search line 60 kilometers long, standard Wolfpack formation. The Americans had detected all 3 boats within 2 hours and destroyed them before the pack could scatter or coordinate a response. "How?" Mueller asked. "How did they find 3 submerged boats in 3,600 square kilometers of ocean?" Lehman pointed to a note in U-231's final radio transmission. "Aircraft appeared from cloud cover, no warning." Then to U-468's report. "Aircraft contacted us while we were submerged at attack depth." He looked up at Mueller. "Herr Captain Lieutenant, these aircraft have some method of detecting submerged boats. Radar, perhaps, or something else. They're not randomly searching. They're finding boats that should be invisible." Mueller dismissed the speculation. "Radar cannot penetrate water, Lehman. You know this. These were coincidental sightings. The Americans got lucky." But even as he spoke, Mueller knew the mathematics of coincidence. 3 boats, all detected within 2 hours in an ocean sector that should have required days to search. The probability approached 0. Something had changed. The Americans had deployed some new detection capability that rendered U-boats visible. Intelligence dismissed the reports as exaggerated combat claims. BDU headquarters analyzed the loss reports and attributed them to tactical errors, poor radio discipline, inadequate lookout procedures, failure to maintain proper depth during aircraft contacts. The official assessment stated, U-boat losses on 22 may resulted from crew complacency and insufficient training, not from any American technical innovation. The report noted that recent U-boat Academy graduates received only 16 weeks of training versus the previous standard of 24 weeks, suggesting that crew quality had declined as the U-boat force expanded. Oberleutnant Friedrich Lehmann reported to BDU headquarters on June 3, 1943, with a comprehensive analysis. American hunter-killer groups demonstrate systematic detection capabilities inconsistent with random search. Loss rates in areas with escort carrier presence are 400% higher than areas without carriers. The probability of the May 22 engagements being coincidental is 0.03%. Mathematical analysis suggests the Americans have deployed some form of airborne detection equipment capable of finding submerged U-boats. His report included comparative loss rates, probability calculations, and tactical recommendations. BDU headquarters filed the report and issued no operational changes. American production statistics supported Lehmann's concerns. The United States had commissioned 12 escort carriers by June 1943. Each carrier operated 4 Grumman TBF Avengers equipped with ASV Mark II radar, Mark 24 acoustic homing torpedoes, and depth charges. The carriers operated in hunter-killer groups. 1 escort carrier, 3 destroyer escorts, assigned to search specific ocean sectors for U-boats. The groups did not defend convoys. They hunted submarines independently, remaining on station until their magazines were empty. American production produced 1 new escort carrier every 34 days, 1 destroyer escort every 8 days. A single American shipyard, Kaiser's Vancouver facility, exceeded the Kriegsmarine's entire annual combatant production in 3 months. The Kriegsmarine produced 11 Type VII U-boats monthly across all shipyards. American shipyards produced 37 destroyer escorts monthly, 12 escort carriers quarterly, and 140 anti-submarine aircraft monthly. The mathematics of industrial production were creating a situation where American losses became irrelevant. They could replace every destroyed ship faster than Germany could sink them. A single American facility at Willow Run produced more ASW aircraft weekly than Germany's entire naval aviation industry produced monthly. They tried deep diving below American radar coverage. The Americans deployed sonobuoys, passive acoustic detectors dropped by aircraft that transmitted submarine positions to circling aircraft. They attempted radio silence to avoid direction finding. The Americans used high-frequency direction finding, HFDF, equipment so sensitive it could detect a single encrypted transmission from 200 kilometers. They tried traveling in larger wolfpacks for mutual defense. The Americans concentrated multiple hunter-killer groups against large concentrations, bringing 6 escort carriers and 18 destroyer escorts against a 12-boat wolfpack. They attempted night surface running to recharge batteries. The Americans had centimetric radar that detected surfaced U-boats in complete darkness from 30 kilometers. June 13, 1943, North Atlantic. 47 degrees 18 N, 29 degrees 52 W. 2:37 hours. Oberleutnant Zur C. Friedrich Lehmann, now assigned to U-758, watched the radar screen with professional fascination even as terror gripped his stomach. The escort carrier's surface search radar painted U-758's conning tower as a bright blip on the American screens at a range of 18 kilometers. Lehmann knew this because U-758 had captured British radar detection equipment that could intercept Allied radar transmissions. The screen showed American search radar, very high frequency, sweeping their position every 12 seconds. The Americans knew exactly where U-758 was, even though it was 2:37 hours, complete darkness, no moon, visibility less than 100 meters. Aircraft approaching. The lookout scream came too late. At 0237:24, a TBF Avenger appeared overhead, guided by radar to U-758's exact position. At 0237:28, Captain Lieutenant Hans Fischer, commanding U-758, ordered emergency dive. At 0237:31, the Avenger dropped 4 depth charges. At 0237:39, the charges detonated at 75 feet depth, precisely where U-758's pressure hull had reached in its emergency dive. The boat shuddered violently. Lights shattered. Lehman was thrown against the chart table, breaking 2 ribs. At 0237:52, the forward torpedo room reported flooding. At 0238:14, Fisher blew ballast tanks and surfaced to fight. Kill time from detection to fatal damage, 50 seconds. At 0238:47, U-758 broke surface with water pouring from its ruptured forward compartment. At 0238:51, the same Avenger began a strafing run with .50 caliber machine guns. At 0238:59, armor-piercing rounds penetrated the conning tower, killing 2 lookouts. At 0239:15, a second Avenger arrived and dropped 2 more depth charges alongside the wallowing boat. At 0239:23, the charges detonated, rupturing U-758's pressure hull in 3 additional locations. At 0239:44, Fisher ordered abandon ship. At 0240:12, U-758's bow rose vertically. At 0240:28, the boat slid beneath the Atlantic stern first. Total engagement duration from radar detection to sinking, 3 minutes 4 seconds. Survivors, 12, including Lehman. Killed, 36. American losses, 0. USS Card recovered Lehman and 11 other survivors at 3:18 hours. Lehman was interrogated beginning at 4:45 hours, still suffering from broken ribs, hypothermia, and shock. "How did they find us in darkness?" the interrogator asked. Lehman, beyond loyalty to a Navy that had ignored his warnings, explained U-758's radar detection equipment. "We knew you were tracking us," he said. "Your radar found us at 18 kilometers. We dove when your aircraft approached. They knew our exact depth when they dropped the charges. This is not luck. This is technology we cannot match." The interrogation report documented Lehman's testimony. German U-boats possess radar warning receivers that detect Allied radar transmissions. However, they possess no effective countermeasures. American centimetric radar operates at wavelengths German radar warning equipment cannot detect. American ASV radar detects surfaced U-boats at ranges exceeding 20 kilometers. American sonobuoys detect submerged U-boats. American Mark 24 homing torpedoes attack U-boats acoustically. German countermeasures are ineffective against American detection systems. Captain Lieutenant Hans-Joachim Mueller read the loss report for U-758 with mounting dread. Lehman, his intelligence officer who had warned about American production, who had calculated impossible probability of American detection success, had survived to testify. The report included Lehman's interrogation, detailed descriptions of how American technology had made U-boats obsolete. Mueller drafted orders for his remaining boats: avoid areas with escort carrier presence, travel submerged during daylight, surface only briefly at night, maintain absolute radio silence. BDU headquarters rejected the orders. Operational requirements necessitate aggressive tactics. U-boats will continue hunting Allied convoys regardless of enemy escort composition. Recognition came slowly, then catastrophically. In April 1943, Allied forces sank 15 U-boats. In May, 41 U-boats went down. In June, 17. In July, 37. The mathematics had inverted. Germans were losing boats faster than shipyards could replace them. Admiral Dönitz ordered temporary withdrawal from the North Atlantic in May, acknowledging that U-boats could no longer operate effectively against American hunter-killer groups. Captain Lieutenant Mueller received orders to withdraw to French bases and await new equipment: acoustic torpedoes, improved radar warning receivers, snorkel equipment for underwater diesel operation. The equipment never came in sufficient quantities. German industry, starving for raw materials and devastated by Allied bombing, could not match American production rates. But Captain Lieutenant Hans-Joachim Mueller, who had laughed at American escort carriers in March, would never have the opportunity to test the new equipment. On July 28, 1943, U-523 Mueller's command, after U-boat losses forced reassignments, encountered USS Santee's hunter-killer group 400 kilometers west of the Azores. At 15:47 hours, a TBF Avenger detected U-523 on radar at 16 kilometers range. At 15:51 hours, 2 Avengers bracketed the crash-diving U-boat with depth charges. At 1551:47, U-523's pressure hull ruptured. At 1552, 14. The boat surfaced briefly, stern section completely flooded. At 1552:38, Mueller ordered abandoned ship. At 1552:56, as Mueller climbed from the conning tower hatch, a third Avenger strafed the boat with .50 caliber machine guns. At 1553:02, armor-piercing rounds struck Mueller in the chest and head. At 1553:09, Captain Lieutenant Hans Joachim Mueller died on his conning tower. Elapsed time from detection to death, 6 minutes 9 seconds. His final words, reported by survivors: "This wasn't combat, this was systematic annihilation." USS Santee recovered 19 survivors from U-523. None were officers. The interrogations revealed that U-523 had sunk 2 Allied merchantmen in a 3-week patrol, the last kills Mueller would ever make. His career total, 19 ships, 101,000 tons. His death brought American confirmation that aggressive U-boat commanders were being systematically eliminated by hunter-killer groups that never stopped hunting, that operated in weather that grounded other aircraft, that found U-boats in ocean sectors that should have been empty. Enemy aircraft destroyed. 0. American losses in U-523 engagement. 6 depth charges, approximately 400 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition. The ammunition expended in the engagement exceeded U-523's total remaining deck gun ammunition supply. Bremerhaven, Germany. March 1945. Oberleutnant Zur C. Friedrich Lehmann sat in the Allied Interrogation Center with Commander Philip Watts, U.S. Navy, and provided detailed testimony about the Battle of the Atlantic from the German perspective. Lehmann had survived U-758's sinking, spent 18 months in a POW camp, and agreed to provide comprehensive analysis of German submarine operations. His testimony would become part of the Strategic Bombing Survey's assessment of American industrial superiority. "We were not defeated by better soldiers, but by better factories," Lehmann stated in his opening testimony. In 1943, America produced 151 escort carriers and escort carrier conversions. Germany produced 11 U-boats monthly. A single American factory, Kaiser's Vancouver shipyard, produced more major combatants in 6 months than Germany's entire naval industry produced in 2 years. The mathematical impossibility of our situation became clear by mid-1943, but operational commanders refused to acknowledge industrial reality. Lehmann provided specific production comparisons from captured intelligence reports. The Willow Run facility in Michigan produced 432 heavy bombers in March 1943. Every bomber carried anti-submarine equipment, radar, depth charges, or eventually acoustic homing torpedoes. Germany produced 74 heavy bombers that month across all factories. The Americans deployed more maritime patrol aircraft from a single production facility than our entire Air Force could field. They didn't just outproduce us, they revolutionized production itself. Commander Watts asked about German awareness of American capabilities. Lehmann's response was unsparing. Intelligence officers understood by April 1943 that American industrial production would bury us. I personally submitted probability analysis showing that American detection of multiple U-boats in short timeframes was statistically impossible without advanced technology. My reports were filed and ignored. Operational commanders believed combat success validated their tactics. When Captain Lieutenant Mueller dismissed my concerns in March 1943, he cited 43 ship kills as proof of U-boat superiority. By August 1943, Mueller was dead, and American hunter-killer groups had destroyed 17 boats from our squadron. Additional testimonies from captured U-boat personnel provided consistent assessments. Korvettenkapitän Werner Hartmann, captured when U-569 was sunk, testified. "We brought submarines to an industrial competition. The Americans treated submarine warfare as a production problem to solve, not a tactical challenge to overcome. Their excess capacity exceeded our maximum effort. They lost escort carriers to U-boats. USS Block Island sank in May 1944 and had replacement carriers operational within 3 weeks. We lost U-boats we could not replace." Captain Lieutenant Klaus Schmidt, who survived U-468's destruction, testified. "They could lose 50 ships and replace them in 30 days. We could lose 5 boats and never recover operational strength." The mathematics were absolute. American production capacity exceeded German destruction capacity by an order of magnitude. A single Kaiser shipyard produced more tonnage monthly than all U-boats sank monthly at our peak effectiveness. Oberleutnant Hans Fischer, formerly of U-758, testified, "Their technology made us obsolete. American centimetric radar detected surfaced U-boats at 20 kilometers. Sonobuoys detected submerged boats. Acoustic homing torpedoes found us underwater. We had no effective countermeasures because we could not produce the electronic equipment in sufficient quantities. Germany manufactured perhaps 200 advanced radar warning receivers total. America equipped every patrol aircraft with detection equipment. The disparity was not merely quantitative but qualitative." Production statistics stated by German intelligence officers painted the full picture. American production from 1940 31945 included 151 escort carriers, 498 destroyer escorts, 2,710 Liberty ships, 414 Victory ships, 18,500 B-24 Liberators, many configured for maritime patrol, 9,900 TBF Avengers, primarily for anti-submarine warfare. German production in the same period: 47 major combatants, 1,113 U-boats, of which 783 were sunk, 18,000 FW-190 fighters, few configured for maritime operations, 0 four-engine heavy bombers in significant numbers. Single American factory comparisons told the story more starkly. Kaiser's Vancouver shipyard alone produced 50 escort carriers and 140 Liberty ships from 1940 to 1945. Entire Kriegsmarine production 1940 to 1945. 47 major surface combatants. Willow Run produced 8,685 B-24 Liberators from 1940 to 1945. German four-engine bomber production 1940 to 1945. 476 E-177 aircraft, the only German heavy bomber. Bath Iron Works produced 86 Fletcher-class destroyers from 1940 to 1945. Germany produced 12 destroyers in the same period. The interrogators asked Lehman about the moment he understood Germany would lose the Battle of the Atlantic. His answer: May 22, 1943, when a single escort carrier group destroyed 3 U-boats in 2 hours. The mathematics became undeniable. If one carrier group could eliminate 3 boats in one afternoon, and America had 12 carrier groups operational by June 1943, the arithmetic of destruction was inevitable. We were losing boats at 3 times our replacement rate. The Americans were building ships at 5 times their loss rate. Exponential curves diverging in opposite directions can have only one outcome. The mathematics proved irrevocable. 783 U-boats sunk, 28,000 submariners killed, 5,000 captured. Of 1,113 U-boats commissioned, only 330 survived the war, most scuttled or captured in port, having never made a successful patrol. American losses to U-boats in 1940 31945 declined from 1.7 million tons annually in 1942 to 580,000 tons in 1943 to 205,000 tons in 1944. By 1945, North Atlantic convoy losses to U-boats approached 0, while U-boat losses exceeded 3 boats sunk for every Allied ship destroyed. The hunters had become the hunted. The predators had become prey. Industrial production had transformed naval warfare into a mathematical certainty. Whoever could produce more ships faster would control the seas. The hunter-killer groups proved that democratic industrial capacity, when fully mobilized, exceeded totalitarian production regardless of enemy tactical proficiency. USS Bogue's hunter-killer group alone sank or damaged 13 U-boats in 6 months of operations. USS Card sank 9 U-boats. USS Core sank 13. USS Guadalcanal captured U-505 intact, the only enemy warship boarded and captured on the high seas by U.S. forces since 1815. The combined American hunter-killer groups sank 175 U-boats from 1940 31945, 23% of all German submarine losses. The groups operated continuously, in all weather, prosecuting contacts until submarines were destroyed or the hunter-killer group expended its entire weapons load. Then the carrier returned to port, rearmed in 48 hours, and resumed operations. American industrial abundance created tactical possibilities that German commanders considered impossible. Hunter-killer groups routinely expended entire magazines, 200-plus depth charges, 20-plus acoustic torpedoes searching for single submarines. German U-boats carried 14 torpedoes maximum and considered expenditure of 4 torpedoes on a single target wasteful. American destroyer escorts fired depth charge patterns of 16 charges per attack, repeated until target was destroyed or contact lost. German escorts rationed depth charges to 4 per attack due to manufacturing constraints. The abundance permitted tactics that German forces could not imagine: saturation attacks, barrier patrols lasting weeks, continuous air coverage, replacement of damaged units without operational interruption. Waste comparisons illustrated the disparity most clearly. USS Bogue conducted one patrol where mechanical issues forced return to port after 6 days, without prosecuting a single submarine contact. The wasted fuel, food, aviation gas, and opportunity cost exceeded the operating budget for an entire German U-boat flotilla for 1 month. The Americans simply repaired the mechanical issues and resumed operations. German submarines with mechanical failures scrubbed entire patrols. There were no spare boats to continue the mission. American hunter-killer groups routinely expended 10,000 gallons of aviation fuel per day on patrol operations. German naval aviation allocated 8,000 gallons monthly to all maritime patrol aircraft combined. The fuel burned in 3 days of routine American operations exceeded monthly German allocation for anti-submarine warfare. The lesson emerged with mathematical precision, underestimating democratic industrial capacity because democracies prefer peace invites strategic catastrophe. Germany's military leadership assumed that American production figures were propaganda, that no nation could produce weapons at reported rates while maintaining civilian living standards. They were wrong. American defense production from 1940-1945 totaled $186 billion, while civilian consumption increased 20%. The United States simultaneously armed itself, equipped its allies, fed Europe, and raised civilian living standards, an economic performance that German planners considered theoretically impossible. March 15, 1943, Captain Lieutenant Hans Joachim Mueller had laughed at American escort carriers in a Lorient bunker. July 28, 1943, Mueller died on U-523's conning tower, killed by aircraft from USS Santee, the same escort carriers he had dismissed as ineffective merchant conversions. Their mockery became history's most catastrophic miscalculation. The lesson remains simple and eternal: dismissing democratic nations as weak because they prefer peace, or underestimating free people's productive capacity when that productive power is mobilized for war, invites strategic and operational annihilation measured not in battles lost, but in entire military forces systematically destroyed by an industrial avalanche they cannot hope to match.